Welcome in. What's up? What's up? Another another Monday. Feels like we will begin today the same way we began last week. Clemson missing on another offensive lineman. It's becoming quite the common theme in this recruiting cycle. Before we get started, I'm reminding everybody, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I'd very much appreciate it. Yeah, Fletcher Westfall commits to Florida. Sometimes you think you have a good feel for things, and you find out afterwards, man, you just didn't. And it's all about the intel you get, and I think a lot of people just got bad intel on this deal, and including myself. If you listen to Fletcher, I've not talked to him today, don't get me wrong, but if you listen to some of the things he said publicly, this was a Florida-Arkansas battle. And going into the weekend, I came very close to throwing a pair of shades out Thursday. Very close. Turns out that's the day that he told the coaching staffs of his decision. So you just never know, man, in these deals. Just never know. It's all about the intel you get, and sometimes a lot of that intel is based off feedback that players are giving the coaching staffs. Let's put it that way. Big miss for Clemson. When you compound it with missing on William Satterwhite too, big miss. Clemson still needs a tackle in this class. They don't have one yet. Roman O'Connell is projected to play inside, and Westfall, it would have been a prototypical type tackle. Even though, I don't see him as a plug and play type player. You're talking about a top 250 talent, one of the top 15, 20 tackle prospects in the class. It's just another big swing and a miss in this recruiting cycle. Clemson started out, mainly focused on those in-state guys. Two of them, I didn't think they ever really had a shot at landing. You got to take your swing. I get it. But you go in knowing you're probably not getting Cam Pringle. The chances of you getting Josiah Thompson are somewhere between slim and none. Maybe the board should have got expanded. It's easier to question a lot of things in hindsight, but I still think some of Clemson's biggest issues when it comes to recruiting offensive linemen is a lack of a track record of putting guys into the league. Let's look at this one today. He commits to Florida. Florida's got an offensive line coach that's actually coached in the NFL. He's got a track record of putting guys into the league from Group of 5 schools. And I know Clemson's got a few guys in the league right now, but, nobody hired in a third-round pick. Only a couple of draft picks, really, here and there. They need to start developing some of these guys that are now on the roster right now and start putting some of those guys into the league. And you combine that lack of a track record with Thomas Austin really still being in his second year. I know he coached a couple of years at Georgia State, but, he's still relatively new into this role, in my opinion. It's just going to take some time. I think Clemson's offensive line recruiting is always going to be hit and miss. It's just the way it is. It is what it is. It's just been a little more miss in 2024, than say 2023. I thought Clemson recruited the offensive line fairly well in 2020. Some of those guys haven't panned out the way most thought they would. But, on paper, it looked like they recruited well in 2020, 2021, 2022, and then again in 2023 in Austin's first year. We'll see what they decide to do next, because you're going to have to expand the board at some point. You're not getting Casey Poe. It doesn't look favorable with Jamison Riggs, and you want to take 2 more. So, I mean, whether it's something they do right now or pump the brakes a little bit and wait till, maybe you get into the season a little bit and you can bring some guys in for games. I don't know how it's going to play out yet, but at some point, if you want to take 3, the board's going to have to expand at some point, On another note, while Clemson's struggling with offensive linemen, Brad Brownell knocks it out of the park and gets Clemson's 3rd highest rated recruit ever since, the beginning of recruiting rankings. Only Milton Jennings and P.J. Hall were rated higher. Dallas Thomas, big-time get out of Arkansas, a top 70 player. And, Brownell has really taken a lot of heat for his inability to recruit the high school circuit. And here he comes and lands a big-time guy. Only member of the 2024 class so far. Not a bad way to get it started. This is a kid with tremendous upside. I think he's a program-changing type of player. He's shown he's long, he's athletic, he's versatile. He has shown an ability to score from anywhere on the floor, including behind the 3-point arc. Can't say enough about that get, man. Big time get for Brad Brownell. I just wanted to make sure I got that in before we head off into the rest of the recruiting stuff. Yeah, hey, it could be worse, man. You could be a Northwestern fan and be dealing with what's going on up there, and your head coach getting fired, and who knows? Maybe there's some couple offensive line recruits fixing to go back on the board. I have no idea. I'm just halfway joking about that. I have no idea who's even committed to Northwestern at this point. It goes from being a little slap on the wrist and being suspended for 15 days to being fired. Man, things change in a hurry. Let's see. I'm sorry, man. I saw a comment and I lost it. Now I'm trying to find it again. First time catching me live. Hey, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you tuning in. I'm fixing to get it rolling here in a minute. Here we go. That's what I'm looking for. Find it pretty suspicious. All of a sudden, Florida become the favorite overnight. See, I'm not sure it played out that way. I think that's just the way it looks like it played out. Like, that's what I was talking about, bad intel earlier. I didn't really start getting wind of this thing till Saturday, and I didn't really, really start getting wind of it till yesterday. That it was going to be Florida, and I wasn't really buying all this Florida smoke until late last night. So that just tells you how late in the game I was starting to get wind of it, and going into the weekend. Even into Friday, man, I was extremely confident in Clemson's chances. He had already told the coaching staff by Thursday, I think it was, that he was going to Florida. I mean, he had already told Billy Napier and them he was coming he'd already made up his mind. If you listen to an interview he gave today, Clemson was not even the runner-up. I just think I'm thinking he did such an excellent job of making every coaching staff feel like they were in it up until the very end that nobody really knew. And or nobody really knew who the favorite was. So that's how things get portrayed that way sometimes. I know that's kind of where some of my stuff comes from, based off, what recruits are telling coaches or what family members are telling me, or, maybe sometimes the recruit themselves. I actually reached out to Fletcher last week, one day, right after he announced his commitment date. So it was early last week, and I've never heard back from him. Which I knew he was on vacation. I don't know when he got back. He was on vacation for a little while. I don't know when he got back, so I didn't know if he was ever going to get back to me or not. He never got back to me. So now I know why. Sometimes they don't play out the way you think they're playing out. And I think this was one of those cases, man. Maybe Clemson was not the favorite all along the way we thought. That's just my take on it. You start thinking of Florida. You start thinking NIL, and I don't know how much NIL factored into this. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Westfall didn't strike me as a guy who was out seeking NIL money. He was not at the top of his list. Not especially when I talked to him. He talked about, culture and academics. Those were his big things in coaching. And then today, if you listen to him, the first two things he mentions, one of them's what conference he's going to play in. The conference, never got mentioned once in a conversation I had with him. It was always, again, academics, culture, coaching, those kinds of things. So you just don't ever know. You don't ever know what a kid's looking for. I don't know how much NIL's played a factor in this thing. Again, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't think Florida come and drop some late bag. I just think we all were wrong. That's just what I think. We were all wrong on this thing. And let's not forget, Florida's already kind of got a little reputation out there for not paying NIL payments on time or not paying them at all. So, I mean, it's not like they got the best track record with NIL at the moment. How can it be a surprise in the NIL? Well, nothing ever really truly surprises me anymore. I'll put it that way. Not when we're talking about recruiting, anyways. But I was caught a little bit off guard with this one. Absolutely, I'm telling you, I almost threw the shades out there Wednesday. That's how confident I was in it, based off somebody I talked to Thursday morning. And I don't know. Something in my gut told me just wait, hold off, and don't do it quite yet. And I came very close to missing. I came very close to missing on my second one with the shades. Very close, very close. Something in my gut told me to hold off and wait, and I did, and never threw them out there. I feel like when recruits leave Clemson, they are high on them, but when they go to other schools, that money talks. I think Clemson does a very good job. For the most part, you're never going to be perfect at this process, but I think Clemson does a pretty good job of weeding out guys who are looking for NIL money first and foremost. See, there's a perception out there that, School A is offering all this NIL money and School B, being Clemson's, offering nothing. That's not the case. I think Clemson just does their NIL a little differently. They focus a lot of it on retention and keeping the the players that are currently on the roster there and out of the portal. See Phil Moffa from last year and Andrew Makuba from last year. Wink, wink. But there are NIL opportunities at Clemson for freshmen. They're just not going to drop this big bag of cash on you, to sign with them. You're going to have to come in and earn it. It's a lot of it's incentivized the way they do it. Um, it's just different than the way some other schools do it. But the perception that Clemson's not offering NIL money, that's just it's really not true. They just do it in a different type of way. Are the coaches just me misreading offensive linemen more than other positions? Seem like they add offers more quickly and before guys commit. More quickly and before guys commit for a lot of other positions, especially D. I think offensive line is one of the hardest positions to evaluate. It's always, it's never, no offensive lineman's ever a sure thing. Go back to Tristan Lee, 5-star offensive lineman, one of the top guys in the country. And I know he got his senior season got wiped out due to COVID and all that stuff, but he wasn't going to be a plug and play type guy regardless. He was going to need a year or two to kind of acclimate. Again, I just think it's the hardest position to evaluate. I don't know if they're misreading them. Maybe some of them. I think it's just. I think I've said this on here before, but I think every recruitment plays out. It is its own little story, and there's could be one reason why this guy doesn't want to go to Clemson, and for another guy, it could be a totally different reason. Again, I've said it many times on here. I thought Fletcher Westfall was the absolute perfect cultural fit for Clemson based on conversations that I had with him. He just seemed like the perfect fit for everything that Dabo Swinney stands for, that he's built inside that program. Sometimes it just don't work out. But yeah, to answer your question, maybe they are misreading some, But again, I think it's the hardest position to evaluate. And for me, I've been saying it for years, until Clemson gets a better track record of developing the guys and putting them in the NFL, and more so than a third-round pick here and there. I think it's going to be hit and miss. I know it's been a lot more missing than hitting in this class, but I'm just speaking generally. I think there's some guys on the roster right now that have NFL potential, and Thomas Austin needs to, hone that, develop it, bring it out of them, and get them put into the league, and not as 6th-round picks, 7th-round picks, and undrafted free agents. They need to be drafted a little higher than that, and that's the only way you're going to build something. I think it's the final hurdle that Clemson's got to cross, and it's one they dealt with throughout this playoff run that they were on. You just had 2 generational quarterbacks to kind of cover up some of the deficiencies in that offensive line, because they've never really had elite talent along that offensive line, not even on those national title teams. Develop the studs we have now, more studs will come. That's kind of my line of thinking. It absolutely will help. Make no mistake, it will absolutely help. If you could develop some of the guys that are on the roster, if Tristan Lee goes on and, has a stellar next 2 years and gets drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, that absolutely helps. Guys like Blake Miller, Colin Sadler, some of those guys that came in last year. Marcus Tate is another one I think's got NFL potential, and I'm probably missing a few in there. But, there's some guys on there that have NFL potential. Just got to get them developed and get them into the league. And, once you get them to campus, a big part of that development lies within the coaching staff. The players have got to want it. They got to put the work in, make no mistake. But, the coaches got to draw it out of them too. Dabo should have hired a former NFL O-line coach, maybe. I like Thomas Austin. I think Thomas Austin's going to be just fine. We go back a year, and I thought he killed it in his first recruiting class. I thought the guys, Ian Reed, Zachariah Owens, Harris Sewell. Owens is probably, he's probably going to need a year or two. But those other two guys, man, I think they have the potential to be really good. Has not worked out as well for him in this class as it did last class. But I think if the fan base would have some patience with him, I think he is the guy that can build something in that position group or in that offensive line room, however you want to say it. It's just not going to happen overnight. I get it. It doesn't look good right now. Especially, outside looking in, perception and all that. Miss on this guy, miss on this guy, miss on this guy. It doesn't make for very good optics. I just don't think it's time to push the panic button just yet, if that makes sense. Yeah, there might be some players from Northwestern fixing to hit the portal, or some decommitments coming. I haven't taken a look at their 2024 class. I have to see what kind of offensive lineman they got committed there. Should have put out more offers on the offensive line, but where does the staff go from here? Yeah, I'm not real sure the way this is going to play out. I don't have any names to give you as far as who might get an offer or anything like that. I have no idea. I feel confident in saying that I guarantee you there's fallback plans, let's put it like that, in place. They got an idea of what they're going to do. I don't know if they make a move quick because Casey Poe's going to announce later this week, and I got him going to Bama. But Jamison Riggs, we don't have an announcement date on him. But let's say even if you luck up and land Riggs somehow, which I don't think is going to happen, but let's say you still need one more offensive lineman. So the board's got to expand at some point. Do they do that before the cookout and try to get somebody on campus then, or they just, show a little more patience and wait till the season starts before they start bringing some guys in? I don't know how they're going to do it yet. But we just have to see how it plays out. And, you always got to see who you end up with before you start worrying too much. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's nothing to worry about here because I've always been of the opinion Clemson should take more offensive linemen. But Dabo's got his number. He's sticking to him, and that's not changing. So it is what it is. I'm one of those guys. I wouldn't mind seeing you take 4 offensive linemen every cycle. That way, when you do miss, it doesn't hurt you as bad. But that's not the way Clemson does it. They usually take 3. Rarely do they take 4 in a class. I think the number's 11, if I'm not mistaken, that Dabo likes to keep. I have to go back and count. I might be wrong about that. Yeah, it ain't 11. My bad. I have to go back and count 11's receiver. But anyways, Dabo's got a number that he likes to keep. Number of guys on Scott. He's got a set number of scholarships allowed for offensive line. He doesn't go over that, and it's 1 or 2 less than we see at other schools like Georgia, Alabama. If it was up to me, I'd take 4 every year. But that's just not how Clemson does it. And, I accepted that a long time ago. Clemson may have to start using the portal for O-line because these high school kids aren't coming. In this class, they aren't right now. Again, if you go back to last cycle, the offensive line recruiting was fine. Cycle before that. If you go back, to 2022, Clemson only took the 2, right? Sadler and Miller, they only took the 2. And when you get to a class like this where you're struggling to land some guys, I think that's where when you have a class where you only take 2, that's when it hurts you. It hurts you. That's why I'm always a fan of taking more of those guys. But as far as the portal goes, I see Dabo using the portal to fill gaps. Like if you need a starter at tackle for a season, you go find you a grad transfer or whatever, or you need a starter at wide receiver or a wide receiver too. You can see if you can find one in the portal. Although it's a lot harder to find backups in the portal, but you get a season or two from now, depending on what happens with this class, you might very well have a gap. You might very well have to go to the portal and get one. We all know they've tried to take an offensive lineman from the portal in each of the last two off seasons. So it's definitely something that he's open to. Yep, Dabo already dipped his toes in the portal for offensive linemen. They've already tried to nab a couple. I know a lot of people think Dabo's just refuses to use the portal, but I'm telling you, if Clemson didn't have the numbers crunch they had this year, you'd have seen that. You'd have seen that coaching staff utilize that portal the way they've never done before. I think they would have taken 2-3 players at least if they had the room. Just turns out they had a lot more guys coming back than they thought they were going to. Again, no, they were looking for offensive linemen. No, they were looking for a veteran corner before they knew Sheridan Jones was coming back. And wouldn't have shocked me to see them try to bring in a defensive end if they had room for him. Last cycle, Austin knocked it out of the park. This year has been tough. Look at Spiller. This cycle and next cycle, he's got his guy. Give Austin a little bit more time. Yeah, this is kind of more my thinking. There was CJ Spiller was catching a lot of hell, about his inability to land running backs in his first two recruiting classes. And his very first one, he was really only on campus for half that cycle. He was catching a lot of flack. And I was always of the opinion that, hey, man, you got underclassmen like Will Shipley and Phil Moffitt that's going to be here for 3 years or 2 more years. That's going to make it difficult to land those higher rated running backs. Now we got a little bit into those guys' career or those two guys' careers, and 2 cycles in a row, Spiller's gotten his guy and he's gotten him early. I could see Clemson's depth chart along the offensive line. I think that played a role in William Satterwhite going to Tennessee. Don't think it played any much of a role in Westfall's decision, but I do think it played one in Satterwhite's. Tennessee's going to have some turnover on that offensive line here in the next year, and he's going to have opportunity to play early, and it sounds like they really sold him on that. Clemson's not going to have so much turnover here in the next year or two. Again, they did all right recruiting since 20, 21, 22, and 23. So they got some guys in there. They just got to develop them. To me, that's been the biggest thing with Clemson's developing those guys that they do get. When you do get the guys, you got to develop them. We'll see if Thomas Austin can turn that thing around. What about Gibson? Is it still down to Clemson and Texas? Yeah, I think it is. I'm not buying all this Ohio State chatter. But, hey, I wasn't buying all this Florida chatter for Westfall either over the weekend. So what do I know? But, yeah, I still think this is coming down to Clemson and Texas. I don't know, man. I still feel good about Clemson's chances here. If – I don't know. If it was going to be Texas, man, I think he'd have done it already. He took a while to decide on a date. So I still feel really good about where Clemson stands. We'll see as we get a little bit closer. We're still a couple weeks out, but I would say cautiously optimistic. But yeah, I still think it's coming down to Clemson and Texas. No, I think I've said it before. I think Texas has done a really good job of recruiting him. He's from Texas, and Steve Sarkisian's been heavily involved in that thing. They got a couple of his friends on board in this recruiting class. I mean, they've done everything they can to put themselves in prime position. We'll see if it's enough to overtake Clemson, because I do think Clemson, at least at one time, was in the lead for Gibson. I think he was very close to pulling the trigger and committing back during the spring game. I thought he was one of the guys that could possibly shut it down after the official visit weekend. Didn't play out that way, but that's how close I think he's come to join in the class. We'll see. I think it's the 22nd he announces on, so a couple more weeks for him. But yeah, I still think it's Clemson and Texas, and I still think Clemson's positioned well. Gonna have to take the Daniel High line. The more Clemson puts in the NFL, the less all of the SEC schools can steal them away too. Yeah, that's something that gets used against them on the recruiting trail, is their lack of success putting them in the league. Whether it's SEC school Florida recruiting against Clemson, or Big Ten Michigan, or Notre Dame that's an independent. We've seen Clemson miss on a few to Notre Dame in the last couple of cycles. So, I mean, it's not just SEC schools. Kind of sounds like Mike Matthews. No one knows who's the favorite. Nope. There's very little. I have not heard anything new about Mike Matthews in 2 weeks. I think it's been about 2 weeks. Have no idea if he's going to shut it down and announce this summer, or if he's going to carry it into the season. I think that's a possibility. I would have at one time leaned towards him making a July decision, but the further we get into the month, the less likely I think that is. The question becomes, does he start taking more visits? Things are going to open back up at the end of the month. Clemson's going to have their cookout. Do they try and get him back on campus one more time if he hasn't made a decision by then? Clemson, Tennessee, I wouldn't discount Southern Cal here. I know there's a lot of buzz surrounding them, and I still think this is kind of a Clemson-Tennessee battle, though. And I have no idea which way that thing's going to go. I'm not sure he does at this point. So, I mean, if they've done a very good job at keeping this thing buttoned up. There's somebody. Northwestern has a Greenville High commit. Let's see. Pull up their recruiting class right fast. I did not know when they had one from Greenville. They have Gabe Van Sickle, who has been committed since May. He's barely inside the top 1,000. He's from Michigan. And they have Julius Tate. He is an interior guy, or that's what they listed out on here. 6'3", 310 pounds, 3-star, rated number 736. Hopefully you're aiming a little higher than that. But we'll see. Now, he is a local kid, and that's how, I maintain that if Blake Franks wasn't a local kid, he's probably not getting a Clemson offer. So if the Northwestern kid that's from Greenville that's committed was decided to open it back up. Who knows? I mean, maybe he is an option. Hopefully the all-in cookout can start to swing the momentum back in our favor some for the guys we're still battling for. That's the hope. That's the hope. Absolutely. You got to see who you can get back on campus of the guys that are still uncommitted. By the time that thing rolls around, it'll be mainly Mike Matthews and Edric Houston and maybe Jamison Riggs that are still undecided off the top of my head. Last year, the cookout, they kind of used that thing to bring back the committed guys. We'll see how they do it this year. We'll see if they send out any new offers. We're in a dead period right now, so it very well might not. It might not start expanding the board after the cookout. I can see it going either way. We'll see. If Mike Matthews is not decided, you absolutely try to at least make the effort to get him back on campus end of the month. Same thing, I guess. Same thing with Edric Houston. Although I think he's probably a long shot at this point. Because you still need another defensive end. I'm not sure what Clemson's going to do about that one either. Once Houston comes off the board, assuming they don't land him. Goes to show it ain't over till the shades drop. Hey, I got lucky on this one. I'm telling you, I cannot overstate how close I came to putting those things out Thursday. I think it was Thursday. I mean, I was very close. Yeah, this is a good point right here. It ain't over till December 15th, man. You got decommitments that can happen. You just never know. I'm always of the opinion, let's see who you get, see where things stand in December before hitting the panic button in July. I get it. Trust me. I know how frustrating the offensive line recruiting has been in this cycle. Especially somebody that talks about it every day. It is extremely frustrating. I get it. But you never know how it's going to play out. Just have to wait and see. For me personally, if you end up with a couple of projects in this cycle, I mean, obviously it's not ideal. I don't think that means it's time to panic. If you get to the next recruiting cycle and you're still struggling, maybe then it might be time to start thinking about pushing that button. You can't have those kind of struggles 2 cycles in a row. Maybe the first visit in today's world needs to be looked at. I don't know. I just think it depends on the guy. It worked fine for him last cycle. It worked fine for him with several guys in this cycle. It's just something about offensive linemen is not ringing. It's not ringing well with these guys in this cycle. I don't know that having the first visits hurting them that much. Does say you had it in the last week of June, does that mean you get Satterwhite instead of Tennessee? I'm not sure it does. I mean, I know Tennessee got last crack at him, but I think one of the biggest things with him was the playing time, early playing time. That's something that Clemson can't offer. It'd be the first weekend in June, last weekend in June. Can't tell you we're having all this turnover on the offensive line and you're going to have all these opportunities played. All they can do is, hey, man, you're going to have to come in here and earn it. There's always going to be examples of, it being better to have the last visit. But I don't think it's that big a deal. Maybe it is with guys here and there. Overall, I'm not sure it's that huge. But the other schools are dropping them big bags. Ohio State, Georgia, Texas A&M. I would say look at how well that's worked out for Texas A&M so far. Yeah, they've won the recruiting wars, but it's not really produced on the field. Georgia's a recruiting machine right now. They don't really got to be dropping big bags. They swinging a big stick without the big bags. And Ohio State's Ohio State. But again, I go back to people think Clemson doesn't offer NIL money to freshmen, and that's just not true, man. It's just they're not going to get into bidding wars, and Alabama ain't getting into bidding wars for guys either. It's just more incentivized, and it's just not going to be something they, like I think Dabo Swinney said it this way. It's not going to be something they lead with. It's not going to be the big part of the recruiting pitch. It's going to be, one of the last parts of the pitch probably. The NIL is going to always hurt you with certain guys. Since you're not getting into bidding wars, that's just the nature of the business. You got to decide on what kind of program you want to run. You want to run a program where, hey, man, we're just going to bid on the highest guys and see what we can get. Or do you want to run a program with some substance, some character? Depends on personal preference. Peter Woods is getting his NIL bag already. Yeah, he's all right. I mean, I have no idea what Peter Woods is getting, but yeah, you can bet he's getting something. We got to stop slow playing these kids in recruiting. They don't appreciate it. Might have benefited Clemson to expand the board a little quicker this cycle. But, hey, Fletcher Westfall's had an offer since last June. They didn't slow play him one bit. Satterwhite got an offer when he came to visit first time. Dabo's never going to offer a kid before he visits, or not, I shouldn't say never, but very, very rarely is he going to offer a kid that doesn't visit. To me, it's not so much the, there's some guys slow playing is going to hurt you with, waiting to offer Andre Green till he visited, hurt with him. It's like having the first visit compared to the last visit. I don't think it hurts with his guys as much as it's made out to be sometimes. You can recruit a kid like hell before you offer him. I mean, just because he doesn't have an offer doesn't mean he's not being recruited. And you can tell him for 6 months, if they're not able to get there, say it's a kid halfway across the country and he's not able to get to campus, hey, you're going to get an offer as soon as you get here. They know they're going to get it. It's just a matter of getting to campus. But, I mean, it's going to hurt you with guys here and there, the way they do it, make no mistake. But I don't think it's hurts sometimes as much as it's made out to be. They want to do everything they can to make that offer mean something. If you look, Clemson's only offered like 60 guys in this class. If you look at, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, they're up around 250. And a big difference in recruiting strategy. Clemson's just not going to offer a bunch of guys. Let me see how I can word this. When you offer guys at that kind of quantity of offers, some of them are going to be uncommittable. You're not going to take all those guys. And there's going to be a bunch of them that you're not going to take until you get decisions from the guys higher on your board. So, I mean, either way, it's going to hurt you. You know, is it better to have an offer that's non-committable, or be patient and wait on one you could commit on the spot with? Depends on your perspective. I bet most do like it. Shows the staff cares about who they offer and they want to build a relationship. Hey, I usually ask the recruits I talk about, or I usually ask the recruits I talk to about the Clemson offer and how they view it with Clemson being so selective. And I've not gotten any negative feedback yet. And no, recruits aren't going to always tell you everything. Sometimes you can hear it in their voice, or if you're talking to them in person somewhere, which is very rare, but you can read it in people's body language. But it's just, I've never gotten any negative feedback talking to a guy on the phone or texting with one, back and forth with one, or whatever. Most of them feel privileged to have gotten the offer from Clemson. That's the way, that's been my experience anyways. New OC, relatively new O-line coach. Once they see the development of guys, we get more elite linemen. Yeah, that's kind of, hey, I got to think that the performance of the offense, particularly the offensive line, the past couple of years plays part in this too. Hey, let's face it. Clemson's offensive line has looked susceptible at times over the past couple of years. It has not been what I would call elite by any stretch of the imagination. I think a part of that is having a quarterback that doesn't fit what you're trying to do on offense, but that's only a part of it. There you go. Look at the Orange Bowl and all the Tennessee guys just blitzing right through, even when Cade was in there. It's an optics thing. I think you got to start developing some of those guys. And I think Austin can do that. I really do. You just can't do it in a year. You got to have more than a year. Yeah, I tend to lean towards thinking Riggs will probably end up going to Georgia Tech. He's a legacy guy over there. He's a hard guy to read, though, man. He doesn't do very many interviews. I just haven't heard much of anything about him lately. I want to say it's 15. Might be 16. I want to say maybe it was 15 and they just changed it to 16 recently. We're talking about numbers for the offensive line. Yeah, when I said 11 earlier, I was thinking about wide receivers. But yeah, it's either 15 or 16. I can't remember if it was 15 and they changed it to 16, but I want to say that's what happened, that it was 15 at one point and now it's 16. Again, if it was me, I'd never take less than 4 in a cycle. Just can't figure out why Dabo can't get O-line development and recruiting up to the rest of the position groups. All groups have ups and downs, but all outside of O-line have had first-round picks. But, hey, valid point. You cannot argue against that. Now I go back to what I said a minute ago. I think Thomas Austin is going to work out fine as your offensive line coach. I just think he needs more than a year. For a long time, Clemson wasn't bringing in NFL quality type offensive linemen. They were making do with what they could get on the recruiting trail. Every now and then you'd see them turn one into an NFL guy. I think, Brandon Thomas, those kind of guys. But I think since 2020, the talent in the offensive line room started to turn around. On paper, that 2020 class looked really good. Hasn't kind of really worked out that way, but on paper, it looked really good. I think that was the year they took a bunch of them. And then really in 2021, the worm really started to turn. 2022, you got Miller and Sadler, but again, you only took the two. 2023, you got Owens, Reed, Harris, Sewell. So I think they got more talent in that room right now than they've ever had under Dabo Swinney. The question is, what do you do with it? How do you develop it? And how many of them end up in the league? And to me, that's the last hurdle to cross for this program. You got to start developing offensive linemen, putting them into the league. It is something that is consistently used against you on the recruiting trail. When you are battling some of these bigger schools for these offensive linemen, again, we've seen Clemson lose out to Notre Dame, whose offensive line coach has a serious history of developing dudes. Clemson's not going to stand any match against Georgia. Georgia's going to be able to basically pick and choose who they want along that offensive line. It just is what it is. You got to start getting more talent in the NFL. I think Clemson's got 5 former offensive linemen in the NFL right now. Jackson Carman was the highest of the draft picks in the 3rd round. And the rest of those guys, for the most part, have been very late round picks or undrafted free agents. That's not blowing anybody away on the recruiting trail, man. That's not going to win you battles over Georgia and Alabama. Not consistently anyways. Again, that's the final hurdle. You got to start putting some more of those guys in the league. All right. I saw some questions about the coming season. I skipped over them while we was talking about recruiting. I'll see if I can find them again. What? There's one. My thoughts on this year's offensive line. I think you got a lot riding on Tristan Lee. Best case scenario, he's your starting left tackle, and everything else can remain status quo. You don't have to do a lot of shuffling. To me, that's the best case scenario. If it works out that way and Lee's able to grab that job by the horns, man, and have a fairly smooth transition and taking over for Jordan McFadden, I think the offensive line is going to take a jump. I kind of look at coaches the same way I do as players. I think they take their biggest jumps in their second year. Austin's going into his second year. These guys have a much better idea heading into their second season of his coaching style, what he expects, and what they need to do than they did a year ago. And I think that will translate to the field. But I think I've said for 3 years in a row, I expected Clemson's offensive line to take a big jump. And it's failed to happen. So take that with a grain of salt. Do I think Maffa gets more of the load? Yes. I think we're going to see more Phil Maffa this year. I think we're going to see Will Shipley used more in a variety of ways. Again, unless you were living under a rock, you probably all heard about, the Phil Maffa and the transfer portal rumors back during the off season. Keeping him in Clemson, part of that pitch had to be telling him he was going to be more involved. So, yeah, I absolutely expect him to be a bigger part of this offense. I think he's earned that. I think he is an NFL caliber running back. That guy needs the ball in his hands. That's not taking anything away from Will Shipley because he needs the ball in his hands too. And it's going to be a fine line you're going to have to walk, kind of divide those carries up. But you need both those guys involved. Muffin needs to be more involved than he has been. That guy is he is a dude. Anybody that's followed me knows I've been tooting his horn since the day he committed. I think he has tremendous upside, maybe more NFL upside than Shipley has. Again, not taking anything away from Shipley because I think he's a dude too. But they're both very well-rounded backs. Shipley's got a little bit more speed. He's got to find a way to get both those guys involved. All right, I knew I seen at least one more. What can we expect to get from our tight ends? I think we got dudes. Do I think Riley uses him more? Jake can be special. I think Jake Brenningstool can be a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. I think you're going to see him split out wide a lot. As maybe the fourth wide receiver on the field, so to speak. For me, the question is what happens behind him. You got Sage Enos, you got Patrick Sapp, and I think Clemson got a lot of value when they took Sapp. I think he's got a lot of upside. Just a developmental guy was going to need a year or two. We'll see how ready he is to contribute now that he redshirted a year. I think he can contribute at least a little bit this year. But I love both of those freshmen, Marcus Dixon, Olsen, Pat Henry. But again, they're both summer enrollees, weren't here during the spring. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're both summer enrollees. But they're both guys that might need a year in the system before they're really ready to contribute. I think they can both be dynamic players in Garrett Riley's offense. But I think Brenningstool is going to be a big part of the offense this year. Big part. He's a matchup nightmare, man. You get that guy. If you could get him, isolated one-on-one on some linebackers, kind of manipulate the matchups here and there, and there's a lot to like about what he can do, and he can stretch. He's not just your possession type tight end. Like he's big target. He can stretch the field, go up, get the ball in the red zone. Just going into his third year now. He knows he's been here a while. He's a veteran now. I think he's going to have a monster season in this new offense. Ooh, I missed this one earlier. Westfall may have even fooled his Yamume. Satterwhite passed. I got the impression he thought Westfall was headed to Clemson and what he tweeted. I think I remember the tweet you're talking about. Hey, look, I said it at the top. I think a lot of this was Westfall just being so good at making every school feel like they were in it. Maybe that's kind of the impression or the feeling that I get. And in doing so, maybe he did the same thing with some of the committed guys. I know David Ajamame told me a while back they've all got a big group chat or a group text. They got some of the uncommitted guys or the targets are in that they text them and stuff. So he may be. I think a lot of people have been. I think we just got this one wrong, man. I know I did. I just think some of us got this one wrong, including myself. I was way wrong on this thing, man. Way wrong. Is the staff going to take the other DB out of? If you're talking about Ashton Hampton, yeah, he's a take. Both him and Gibson are takes. I'm just not sure where Hampton's a take at. I'm not sure if they take him as a corner or a safety, because I could see him playing either. I could see him playing nickel. I could see him playing safety. I could see him playing corner. I've never talked to him, so I haven't been able to ask him what they're recruiting him as. That might depend on who ends up in the class and who's not in the class. If you miss on Gibson, then you can take him as your second corner maybe. But I don't know what the deal is there. But, yeah, they're both takes. What is the number total for this cycle? At one point, I was thinking 21, 23. Now I'm thinking more like 19 to 21. You're not going to take a quarterback in this class, and so that knocks one off of it right there. You're not taking a fourth offensive lineman most likely. So I'm going 19, 20, 21. That number is going to always be fluid, though. Somebody could leave unexpectedly in the middle of the season. It seems to happen more often than not these days, so you never know. I say 19 to 21, though. Ooh. Do you expect Bakich to go back to the portal after the draft? I just had this conversation with a good friend of mine today, and my answer was I am very anxious to see what they do with the portal after the draft, because I think it's been known that Grice is not coming back. I think it's been known that Ingles not coming back. I think there's a very, very good possibility that Blake Wright's not coming back. From my understanding, if he gets drafted, he's gone. I'm not sure if that meant the first 10 rounds or not, because it makes a difference when it comes to the baseball draft when it comes to money. But I know Clemson's already added one bat out of the portal, the guy from Michigan, and they've already added one pitcher. I think they've got a stellar class coming in, seeing as they're only going to lose two of those guys to the draft. The center fielder Dylan Head and the infielder Stephen, I forget how you say his last name, but I thought there were a couple more guys they could potentially lose. Now it looks like they're not going to lose them. Hard throwing pitchers in this freshman class, but I could see it. They've already taken, again, the bat, the guy from Michigan. They've taken a middle infielder from the Ivy League, and then a pitcher from, God, I forget where he's from, but another pitcher. I wouldn't mind seeing him at a veteran power arm. That's something Clemson doesn't have, is a veteran guy that can throw 97, 98, 99 consistently. And then another bat, another power bat. But, yeah, I could definitely see him going back to the portal now that the draft's over. We'll see. I'm kind of anxious to see how that plays out too. I'm not sure which way what's going to happen 100%, but I could definitely see him targeting another a power arm and a power bat. Because let's say Wright's gone, you're losing your whole infield, man. The whole infield's gone. That's a lot. And it wouldn't shock me if we saw Canarella move back to the infield next year, but that's a long ways off anyway. But Is there any truthful about teams offering a lot of uncommittable offers, whatever that means? Oh, yeah. These guys, these teams that offer 240, 250 people, all those offers aren't committable, not on the spot, anyways. Um, when I say uncommittable offer, I don't mean that it's never committable. I mean, like, let's say Georgia offers 20 offensive linemen, over a 6-month period, and none of them's jumped on board yet. They're not going to take a commitment if the guy 20th on the board wants to commit on the spot when he's offered. They're not going to take a commitment from that guy, necessarily until they know what some of the guys higher on their board is going to do. They're not going to take this guy over somebody higher on their board. They're going to make him wait. And that's what I'm talking about with uncommittable offers. They might eventually become committable offers, but they aren't always committable on the spot when they're handed out. I think a lot of that goes on. Yeah. And Dabo doesn't do that at Clemson. If he offers somebody, you can commit on the spot, and he'll take your commitment if he thinks you're done and ready to shut it down. That's what they did with Gideon Davison this cycle. Davison committed the day they called and offered him. I know he didn't go public for a little while longer, but he committed on the spot. And a lot of schools won't let you do that. They want to see what some other guys are going to do before they'll let you commit. It just depends where you are on their board. I think that goes on a lot. Excited for some football. The closer we get, the longer. Hey, next Tuesday is media day in Clemson. All the Dabo and all the position coaches will be speaking. Then the next week after that, you got the ACC kickoff, and then it'll be time for fall camp. So, man, football season is pretty much here. I know it's not games yet, but there's going to be more to talk about than just pure speculation here in the next week or so. Who of the current class will make the quickest impact? If we're talking about 2024, the class they're recruiting right now, Sammy Brown, the linebacker. I think it's more than likely that both Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter will be gone after this season. He's going to be able to slide right in and help ease the loss of those two guys. I think he'll be your weak side linebacker sooner, much, much sooner rather than later. Maybe not start day one, although I think that's a distinct possibility. He is going to be on the field early and often. And I think those two receivers, Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore, I think those are both plug-and-play type guys. I can see them come in here and play in a lot from the jump. Need more 2 running back sets. Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that this year. I mean, I really do. I think we're going to see more 2 back sets this year. I think Moffitt is better than Shipley. Isaac, you are not the only one of that opinion. So I would not call you crazy. There might be more out there that think like you than you're aware of. Explosive plays is the secret sauce. We can find a receiver to open the top. Yeah, explosive plays. The lack of explosive plays has really hampered the offense in recent seasons. It's been a big part of why the offense is just lulled and lagged and stalled so much. It's much harder to score when you need 10, 11, 12 play drives, than it is when you pick up 40 yards in one play and you only need 3 or 4 plays. So, yeah, Clemson's got to get back to picking up those chunk plays. Absolutely. Clemson needs their receivers. First and foremost, they got to keep Bo Collins healthy. Adam Randall's got to stay healthy. If you can't get those 2 guys healthy and keep them healthy, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. what is the cookout all about? Every summer, Clemson holds this thing called the All-In Cookout. It's just a recruiting event where they, they bring all the committed guys back to campus for a big cookout, and they'll bring some uncommitted targets. It's a recruiting event. That's what we're talking about. Do you think this year Goodwin and Grisham are under the microscope? Dabo pretty much set the tone by making the OC change, and both of those coaches missed the mark. Grisham for a little longer. I think they're all been put on notice, but that's what I think. I don't think they're. I think they've all been put on notice. That's my opinion. From my understanding, right after the season, Dabo had a come to Jesus meeting with the coaching staff. And I think they were all put on notice. I don't think it's just Goodwin, Grisham, or whoever. I think across the board, Dabo Swinney is as competitive as a guy as you'll run across. That guy wants to win, man. He wants to win, and he wants to win at a high level. He's not going to settle for these 3-loss seasons. Not back to back to back. You know what I'm saying? He has very high expectations for this program, and I was of the opinion that a little bit of complacency has settled in on the coaching staff, and maybe he came to that same conclusion. But whatever conclusion he came to, he has shown that he's not going to stand for it. It's time to poop or get off the pot. $2023. What? Sure, you'll get seen. 2020, yes, 2023. You get Peter Woods. I think Peter Woods is going to be the impact guy out of that class. I think he's going to hit the field early, often maybe start day one. I think you're going to see him lined up inside, outside. I think Clemson's going to use more 3-man fronts this year. So if I got to pick one, I'm going with him. If I got to pick one on the offensive side of the ball, give me Tyler Brown, freshman wide receiver. Clemson's really lacked speed in that wide receiver room the past couple of years. And I know he wasn't an early enrollee, but I think Tyler Brown can come in and help this team in ways this year. All right. Man, I'm going way over tonight. Don't forget, remind everybody, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're still trying to grow this thing, man. We appreciate everybody that subscribed, everybody that tunes in every Monday night. I have a blast with you guys. If anybody that tuned in to our July 19th recruiting blowout, our first recruiting blowout show, we are fixing to do another one. July the 19th, we're going to be on location, same place right there at Europi, downtown Clemson, right there at Dockside. Invite everybody to come on out, 7 p.m. Well, we're not going to do it at 5 o'clock in the day this time. It was a little too hot that day. We're going to aim for a little bit later in the evening, 7 o'clock next Wednesday, July the 19th. Everybody come on out and join us. We got some free things to give away. Touched on this last week. We didn't give the autographed football away at the first show, so we still got that to give away. Appreciate all y'all tuning in. Check y'all out next Monday, man.